The 43rd floor of Hartwell Tower did not breathe the same air as the rest of the city. Down on the street, Portland moved the way cities always do, crowded and imperfect, smelling of rain and coffee and exhaust. People bumped shoulders on crosswalks. Pigeons argued over pizza crusts on the sidewalk. A man played a saxophone badly outside the post office, and someone dropped coins into his case anyway, out of pity or affection or simple human softness. None of that reached the 43rd floor. Up here, the air was temperature controlled to exactly 68 degrees Fahrenheit. The carpet was the color of anthracite. Every surface, the reception desk, the conference table, the glass partitions between offices had been chosen to communicate a single message to anyone who entered. Precision lives here. Nothing was accidental. Nothing was soft. The company was called Hartwell Dynamics. What it actually did, supply chain analytics, enterprise logistics, software, consulting to Fortune 100 clients across 3 continents, was less important to most of its employees than the culture it had developed under its current CEO. That culture could be summarized in a single phrase that had passed from department to department like folklore. She doesn't repeat herself. Victoria Hartwell was 41 years old. She had built the company from a boutique consulting firm of 9 people into a global operation with nearly 4,000 employees. She had done this in 11 years, through 2 recessions, 1 hostile takeover attempt, and a public scandal involving a former CFO that would have destroyed a lesser organization. She had short, dark hair, usually pulled back. She wore gray and black, almost exclusively. Her handshake was firm and quick, like everything else about her. She did not raise her voice. She never needed to. On a Tuesday morning in October, she walked into the executive boardroom 7 minutes before a scheduled review meeting. The 12 directors assembled there, men and women who collectively managed divisions worth hundreds of millions of dollars, straightened in their chairs as though a current had passed through them. Laptops clicked open. Notebooks appeared. Someone reached across the table to silence a vibrating phone with unnecessary force. Victoria sat. She opened a single folder. She looked up. "Revenue projections for the Southeast Corridor," she said. A director named Gregory Franklin, who had been with the company for 9 years and considered himself one of her more trusted lieutenants, cleared his throat and began to speak. She cut him off after 4 sentences. "Those numbers are from last month's deck," she said. "You presented last month's projections with this month's header on the slide, which means either you didn't update the data or you assumed I wouldn't notice." She closed the folder. "Go home, Gregory. Come back tomorrow with actual numbers." Gregory Franklin, 47 years old, father of 3, holder of an MBA from Wharton, stood up and left the room without a word. He did not protest. He did not explain. He took his laptop and his jacket, and he walked to the elevator, and he pressed the button for the lobby, and he spent the rest of that Tuesday sitting in a coffee shop 2 blocks away, staring at a spreadsheet, grateful he still had a job. No one in the boardroom mentioned it after he left. The meeting continued. The remaining 11 directors spoke carefully, backed every claim with verified data, and agreed to everything Victoria said. The elevators opened onto the 43rd floor with a soft chime, like the beginning of a church service. The reception staff called her Mrs. Hartwell, never Victoria, never Vicky, never anything personal at all. The interns, when they saw her crossing the lobby, found somewhere else to look. They called her the silent storm in the lower floors. Not to her face, not to anyone who might mention it, to anyone who might mention it to anyone near her, but it passed around the break rooms and the stairwells all the same. The silent storm is doing a walkthrough today. The silent storm shot down the Meridian proposal. The silent storm doesn't take lunches on Wednesdays. Don't schedule anything near noon. The name was appropriate. There was nothing theatrical about her authority. It didn't thunder. It arrived, and things changed, and then it was gone, and what remained was a landscape altered beyond argument. What the 43rd floor did not know what it could not have known, because Victoria Hartwell was as unlikely to broadcast her private life as she was to show up to work in pajamas, was that 12 stories below, in the executive residence floors, the company maintained for C-suite personnel, working extended Portland contracts. Something was happening that no amount of management precision had been able to address. Her daughter was losing it. Again, Victoria could hear it before she reached the private elevator. Not the screaming itself, the penthouse was well insulated, but the subdued tension in the face of the building coordinator who met her at the elevator bank with carefully neutral eyes. That expression said everything. She stepped into the residence and found two things: the remnants of a ceramic lamp on the floor near the kitchen island, and a woman named Dr. Pauline Radford, child psychologist, recommended by 3 separate colleagues, author of a book about early childhood behavioral frameworks, standing in the middle of the living room with the resigned look of someone who had already decided to quit. "Where is she?" Victoria said. "Her room. She's calmer now." Dr. Radford paused. "Mrs. Hartwell, I want to be straightforward with you. I've seen children with significant attachment difficulties, children coming out of trauma, children with diagnosed behavioral conditions. Lily is not diagnosable. She's not disturbed. But she is." The psychologist chose her words carefully. "She is responding to something that my involvement alone cannot fix." Victoria looked at the broken lamp. A good lamp. Italian ceramic. In a shade of deep terracotta that had taken her an embarrassingly long time to choose. She had liked it. "She's 8 years old," Victoria said. "Yes." She broke a lamp. She threw it at the wall when I suggested we try the breathing exercise again. "Mrs. Hartwell, I'm going to recommend a different approach. Something more systemic, perhaps a family-based therapy model. Something that involves—" "I'll have my assistant contact you about next steps," Victoria said. Dr. Radford recognized the end of a conversation when she heard one. She picked up her bag. She left a business card on the kitchen counter, which Victoria did not look at. The door clicked shut behind her. Victoria stood in the silent apartment for a moment. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Portland lay spread out in the afternoon, gray bridges over the river. The smudged hills to the west, the ordinary human world going on without any awareness of this particular problem, on this particular floor, of this particular building. She walked to Lily's door. She raised her hand to knock. Inside, she could hear the specific sound of her daughter's breathing. Not crying anymore, not screaming, just the low, stubborn silence that had become, in the past 8 months, the thing Victoria feared more than any boardroom. She knocked twice. No answer. She lowered her hand and walked to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water, and stood at the counter for a long moment, looking at nothing. Victoria Hartwell, who had restructured a failing company, who had fired executives without blinking, who had testified before a congressional subcommittee and come out ahead, stood in her own kitchen and did not know what to do next. On the 31st floor, in a utility corridor that smelled of industrial cleaner and old carpet, a man named Daniel Mercer was eating lunch. He sat on an overturned bucket beside his cart, which held a mop, several spray bottles in different colors, clean rags folded in a stack, and a small zippered pouch where he kept a phone, his keys, and, on most days, 2 aspirin. His lunch was in a blue container that he had packed that morning at 5:45 a.m. Rice, roasted vegetables, 2 hard-boiled eggs. He ate with the focused attention of someone who understood that a half hour was a half hour, and no more. Daniel Mercer was 36 years old. He was not a remarkable-looking man, medium height, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that people forgot easily because it didn't demand anything of them. Brown hair, kept short, a small scar above his left eyebrow from a bicycle accident when he was 12. He wore the gray uniform of the building's maintenance staff, and he wore it as though it were exactly what it was, clothing appropriate for the work he had come to do. He had been at Hartwell Tower for 14 months. In those 14 months, he had not been late once. He had not called in sick. Though he had worked through 2 colds and 1 significant case of food poisoning that he declined to mention to his supervisor. He had not complained about the schedule changes, the late nights during corporate events, the early mornings before the executive floors opened. His supervisor, a brisk woman named Carolyn, who had been managing the building's maintenance staff for 11 years, had written on his last quarterly form, D. Mercer. No issues. Reliable. Good. This was, in her system, approximately the highest praise she gave. On the floor beside his bucket, a small backpack leaned against the wall. It did not belong to him. At 12:47, which was 3 minutes before his lunch break ended, the corridor door opened and a girl appeared. She was 7 years old, with dark hair in an uneven braid that looked like it had been done quickly or by someone with limited patience. She had on a yellow shirt and leggings with a small rip at the left knee. She was carrying a battered paperback book pressed against her chest like a shield. "Hi, Dad," she said. "Hi, Rosie," Daniel said. "Good morning. Mrs. Alvarez gave us a quiz. How'd you do?" "Fine." Rosie Mercer sat down on the floor beside her father's bucket, as though this were the most natural arrangement in the world, which for her it was. She opened her backpack and took out a second blue container smaller, with a cartoon bee on the lid, and began to eat. They sat together in the utility corridor in comfortable silence. Rosie was reading her book between bites. Daniel finished his lunch, packed the container away, and rested his elbows on his knees. He was not performing contentment. He simply was content, the way a person can be when they have arranged their life around the things that actually matter to them, and have stopped being embarrassed about it. "Dad," Rosie said, without looking up from the book. "Yeah. Can I come up when you do the high floors today? You know you can't be on the executive floors, Ro." "I know. I mean before. The lobby levels. You can sit in the side room where Carolyn has the extra chairs," he said. "Read your book. Be invisible." "I'm very good at being invisible," Rosie said seriously. "You are," Daniel agreed. "Best in the building." He stood, picked up the mop, checked his supply cart. He glanced at his daughter, small, brown-haired, absolutely absorbed in whatever story she was reading, and for a moment his expression did something private and complete, a father looking at his child. Then it was back to neutral, and he pushed the cart out of the corridor and into the hall. Nobody on the 31st floor knew his name. A few knew he was the one who kept the bathrooms spotless, and who had once, quietly and without fanfare, stopped an overflowing sink from flooding an entire server closet by turning off the correct valve before anyone else had figured out what the sound was. Nobody had thanked him for that specifically. Nobody had thought to. There was one detail about Daniel Mercer that nobody in the building knew, because Daniel Mercer did not talk about it. His employment application listed his previous occupation as general labor, independent contractor, which was technically not false but was approximately as descriptive as calling the Pacific Ocean a body of water. Before Portland, before the gray uniform, before the utility corridors, and the 14 months of reliable invisibility, Daniel Mercer had spent 6 years running a nonprofit youth services organization in Chicago that had, at its peak, operated 11 after-school centers and served over 900 children in underserved communities annually. He had a degree in developmental psychology from the University of Michigan. He had been, in a former life, the kind of person who gave keynote addresses at conferences. He didn't think about that often. There was no percentage in it. What he thought about was Rosie's quiz. And whether she'd eaten enough for lunch. And whether the walk-in closet on 38 still had that slow drain that nobody had gotten around to fixing. The day it happened was a Wednesday in late October. Cold enough that the city had begun to look the way it always did, in fall a little sharper. The light at a different angle, the trees along the street stripped to their useful bones. Lily Hartwell had not spoken to her mother in 3 days. Not in the way that a child gives someone the silent treatment that implies a performance. A strategic withholding. What Lily was doing was simply not engaging. When Victoria entered a room, Lily left it, or turned toward the window, or became extremely interested in whatever surface was nearest. She ate when food was left for her. She slept. She did not break anything. She simply maintained a careful, comprehensive distance, the way a small animal maintains distance from something large and unpredictable. On this particular Wednesday, the woman who was supposed to be watching Lily, the latest in a series of qualified, professional caregivers, who had each lasted between 3 days and 3 weeks, had stepped away to take a phone call. She had been gone for 4 minutes. This was all the time required. Lily moved through the penthouse in the way she always did when she was unsupervised, silently, quickly, with a sense of purpose that she couldn't have named if asked. She was not trying to go anywhere specifically. She just needed to be somewhere that wasn't there. She found the service door at the back of the kitchen left unlocked because the caretaker had come up that morning with groceries and hadn't reset the latch, and she pushed through it and into the corridor beyond. The corridor was gray and plain and smelled of nothing in particular. Lily walked down it without thinking about where she was going, turned a corner, found a stairwell, went down one flight, pushed through a door, and emerged onto the 31st floor. The 31st floor was not an executive level. It housed mid-level administrative departments, procurement, legal support, records management. On a Wednesday afternoon, it was moderately populated, but the section of hallway where Lily found herself was a side corridor off the main thoroughfare, used mostly for equipment storage and access to the maintenance areas. She stood in this corridor, in her yellow shirt, and looked at the girl sitting on the floor beside a stack of folded chairs. The girl looked up from her book. For a moment, neither of them said anything. "Your braid is coming out," the girl said. Lily put a hand to her hair. This was true. It had been coming out since morning. "I know," Lily said. The girl considered this. Then she moved her backpack over slightly and patted the floor beside her. In the practical, unself-conscious way that 7-year-olds offer invitations, no drama, no performance. Just, "Here is a space. You can have it if you want." Lily sat down. "What are you reading?" she said. "It's about a girl who finds a door in her garden that goes somewhere different every day," the girl said. Today she went to a place where everything was made of glass. It was beautiful, but it was also really cold, so she had to leave. "Is it a good book?" "Yes." "Do you want to see the pictures?" There were pictures, not many small illustrations scattered through the chapters, soft and gray-toned. Lily looked at them for a while, leaning in closer than was strictly necessary. The girl held the book steady without being asked. "I'm Rosie," the girl said. "I'm Lily." "I know," Rosie said. "My dad said there's a girl who lives upstairs. Does everyone know?" "Just him, I think. He knows most things about the building." They sat together. Rosie went back to reading. Lily looked at the hallway, which had nothing particular to offer in terms of visual interest, but which was, crucially, quiet and unsupervised and uncomplicated. After a few minutes, Lily took a small notebook out of the pocket of her leggings. She carried it always, a habit nobody had told her to start, and began drawing in it. She drew without purpose. A house with a crooked chimney, a dog that looked more like a horse, several attempts at a bird. Neither of them talked much. They didn't need to. 40 feet away, at the corner of the corridor, Daniel Mercer had stopped pushing his cart and was watching. He watched for about 90 seconds. Then he continued down the hall, moving quietly, and did not disturb them. When Victoria's increasingly frantic assistant found Lily 20 minutes later, the girl was calm, in a way she had not been in months. Not happy. Exactly. Not transformed. Just settled. The way water settles when you stop stirring it. Victoria watched the security footage that night. She watched it twice. She paid particular attention to the moment 7 minutes into the clip when Rosie said something. And Lily laughed. A real laugh. Small and quick, but real. Victoria Hartwell, in the privacy of her home office at 11:30 at night, watched her daughter laugh on a security tape and felt something she was not entirely prepared to feel. He found her on Thursday, sitting in the same spot in the corridor. This time, without Rosie. The building's school shuttle had dropped Rosie at an afternoon program, and Lily had apparently found her way back to the 31st floor hallway with the calm determination of someone who has found a particular bench in a park and intends to keep using it. Daniel set his cart in the alcove and crouched down to Lily's level. He did not say, "You're not supposed to be here." He did not say, "Does your mother know where you are?" He did not say, "I need to call someone." He said, "What are you drawing?" Lily looked at him for a moment, with the careful assessment children apply to adults when they're deciding whether the adult is worth the trouble of responding to. "A city," she said finally. "But underground. Everything is upside down." He looked at the notebook. The drawing was strange and meticulous: buildings hanging from the ceiling of a cave, rivers flowing along the roof, tiny people walking on surfaces that shouldn't have held them. "Looks like the gravity works differently," he said. "It does," she said. "In my city, heavy things float, and light things sink. So if you're sad, you sink to the floor. If you're happy, you float to the ceiling. What about if you're both at the same time?" She thought about this with genuine seriousness. "Then you stay in the middle." He nodded, as though this were a perfectly reasonable piece of physics. He sat back on his heels, not quite sitting, not quite standing at eye level with her, which was, she would not have been able to explain, something she noticed. "Do you like it here?" he asked. "In this building?" "No," she said, without hostility. "Just matter of fact. What don't you like about it?" She thought again. This man asked questions differently from other adults. Other adults asked questions, and then moved before she'd finished thinking, as though her answer were less important than the asking. He waited. He was still. "It's too clean," she said eventually, "and too quiet, and everything smells like nothing." "Yeah," he said, "it does. You work here, though." "I do. Don't you hate it?" "Sometimes," he said. "But I'm here because my daughter goes to school nearby." So, Lily considered the exchange rate of this information. A reason that wasn't about money, or ambition, or anything she'd heard adults give before. Just because of my daughter. "My mom works here," Lily said. "I know," he said. "She's very important." "So I hear." "She doesn't have time," Lily said. Not bitterly. Just as a fact, she was still in the process of metabolizing. "Not always. Sometimes she does. But not for the middle part. She's there at the beginning and the end. Not the middle part." He looked at her for a moment, not with pity, which she would have recognized and rejected. With something quieter. "The middle part is the longest part," he said. "Yes," she said. "That's the problem." He stood. He picked up his mop. He looked back at her once, briefly. "My name is Daniel," he said. "I'm Lily." "I know," he said, and went back to work. That night, Victoria Hartwell sat in her office on the 43rd floor, reviewing a merger proposal that deserved her full attention and received, for the first time in her professional memory, something considerably less. She kept returning to the security footage, to the crouching man with the gray uniform and the unhurried posture. To her daughter's face. She pulled his personnel file. The performance reviews were clean, uniform, meaningless. The application gave her almost nothing. She ran his name through a more thorough search and found, after some digging, a series of archived articles from a Chicago newspaper pieces about a nonprofit called Foundation Forward that had run youth centers in the South Side for 6 years. And there, in a photograph from a gala event 7 years ago, was a man she almost didn't recognize. Daniel Mercer, in a dark jacket, shaking hands with a city alderman, smiling the kind of smile that belongs to someone who has recently accomplished something real. She read the articles. Foundation Forward had lost its primary funder in 2019, a private family foundation that had abruptly shifted its giving priorities. Without that funding, the organization had been forced to close 5 of its 11 centers within a year. The remaining centers had limped along through 2020 and into 2021, then closed entirely. The organization dissolved. Mercer was not quoted in the final article. Victoria set the papers down and looked at the window. Of course, she thought. For the next 2 weeks, a pattern established itself without anyone naming it or agreeing to it. Lily, left to her own devices in the afternoons, would migrate to the 31st floor corridor. Some days Rosie was there and they would read and draw in the easy parallel play manner of children who have found a compatible frequency. Some days Daniel would pass through and exchange a few sentences with Lily, questions that assumed she had things worth saying, observations that treated her perspective as data rather than noise. Some days she simply sat in the hallway alone, in the plain gray quiet, and seemed to find in it something that the curated, expensive silence of the penthouse didn't offer. She was less volatile. The staff noticed it before Victoria said anything. The woman from the catering service who brought up meals mentioned to Carolyn in maintenance that the girl on 32 had been easier this week. One of Victoria's assistants, a careful young man named Preston, noted in his daily briefing that the residents had had no reported incidents in 8 days. He included this information with the same tone he used to report that the quarterly earnings call had been rescheduled, but his eyes, briefly, said something else. Victoria brought in another specialist, a behavioral interventionist from Boston, with a particular approach she'd read about. A man named Dr. Harris Blevins, who charged an amount that would have funded a small marketing campaign and who arrived with a briefcase and a set of laminated emotion cards and a practiced manner that suggested he had done this hundreds of times, and it had worked hundreds of times. It did not work. On his third day, Lily pushed the laminated emotion cards off the table and told him she didn't want to talk about her feelings. She wanted to go to the hallway. He reported to Victoria that the girl showed significant resistance to structured therapeutic engagement and recommended a different modality. Victoria thanked him and paid his invoice and showed him out. She watched the footage again, Daniel crouching at eye level. The waiting. The absence of any visible attempt at intervention. She could not identify the methodology. That was the problem. She was very good at identifying methodologies. She called her executive assistant at 8 a.m. on a Thursday. "Have Daniel Mercer from the maintenance staff available for a meeting at noon," she said. "The small conference room on 32. And tell him it's not about his job. I don't want him to be alarmed." Her assistant paused. "Yes, Mrs. Hartwell." She hung up and went back to her merger proposal and tried to concentrate on something she was extraordinarily qualified to think about. He was there when she arrived. He was standing, not sitting, not in any particular posture of deference or defiance, just standing the way he stood at his cart, with the uncomplicated ease of someone who is not performing anything. Victoria Hartwell had conducted several thousand meetings in this building, and in boardrooms across the country, and in hotel conference rooms, and on occasion in the back of moving vehicles. She had a fixed ritual. She sat, she opened her folder, she began. She was very good at beginning. She sat. She did not open her folder. She looked at him. "You don't have to remain standing," she said. "I'm fine," he said. Not rude, not deferential, just accurate. She looked at him for a moment longer than she usually allowed herself to look at anyone. He returned the look without any apparent difficulty. "My daughter," she said. "Yes," he said. "What are you doing differently?" He considered this. "Nothing, specifically. Something is different," she said. "The behavioral pattern has shifted materially. She's calmer. She engages." "She's not?" Victoria stopped. She straightened a paper in front of her that didn't need straightening. "The specialists I've brought in are very good at what they do. She's resistant to all of it." He nodded slowly. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. When you're with her in the evenings, what do you usually try to do?" Victoria frowned slightly. "I try to engage with her. Ask about her day. Suggest activities. Recently, I've been trying to be more physically present. Less phone. Less." "What does she usually do?" "She withdraws. Or she acts out." "Which is," Victoria stopped again. "Which is what we've been trying to address." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She told me the middle part of the day is the longest part. That you're there at the beginning and the end. But not the middle." Victoria said nothing. "I think," he said carefully, "that she knows you're trying. I think she's known for a while that you're trying. I don't think that's the problem." "Then what is the problem?" He looked at the table, not because he was avoiding her gaze, but because he was thinking carefully, and thinking was something he did with his whole body. "When she's with me," he said, "I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm not trying to get somewhere with her. I'm just there. And she knows I'll be there in the same place tomorrow. That's not nothing. For a kid, you're saying she doesn't trust me. I'm saying trust is slow. It's especially slow when you've already felt the absence. She's not testing you. She's not trying to punish you. She's just waiting to see what's permanent and what's temporary." He paused. "And I think every time someone shows up and then leaves, it resets the clock." Victoria looked at him for a long time. "How do you know any of this?" she said. "I used to work with kids," he said. "Simple. Final." "I know," she said. Something moved briefly across his face. Not surprise exactly. A small recognition of her thoroughness. "Foundation forward," she said. "Yes." It closed. "Yes." She did not ask why or what happened. "Or don't you miss it?" She could see on his face that these were not questions that needed asking or answering. Some things closed. Some chapters ended. What you did with what remained was a different question entirely. "My daughter laughs around you," Victoria said. It cost her something to say it, not pride something more complicated, The specific ache of hearing that your child's laughter belongs primarily to someone else right now. He nodded. He didn't try to make it easier. She's not a difficult child, he said. She's a child who hasn't been understood. Those look the same from the outside, but they're completely different problems. Victoria stood. She straightened her jacket. A gesture she made at the end of meetings, when they had gone somewhere useful. I appreciate your time, she said. Sure, he said. He left. She stayed in the conference room for a few minutes, alone, looking at the Portland skyline through the window. The river moving through the city. The bridges, reliable, crossed by 10,000 ordinary people with 10,000 ordinary purposes. She tried. This was the honest part. She genuinely, effortfully tried. She moved meetings. She told Preston to block out the hours between 4 and 7 o'clock on weekdays, as unavailable for anything short of a genuine crisis. She began coming home at 5 instead of 8 or 9. She sat with Lily not across from her, not at the kitchen table with its implications of structured activity, but near her, on the same sofa. Reading different things, not talking. It was harder than it had any right to be. Victoria Hartwell had spent 11 years, becoming someone who was exceptional at directed action. Every minute she spent in a meeting had a purpose. Every conversation moved toward an outcome. Even her leisure, the runs she took on weekend mornings, the books she read had a forward momentum, a sense of making herself better, preparing for the next thing. Sitting next to Lily without an agenda felt like speaking a language she had once known, and now had to relearn from scratch, mispronouncing every syllable. Lily tolerated her proximity with the careful neutrality of a cat that has been startled too many times. Not hostile, not warm, present, in the way that presence can be achieved without being offered. Victoria noticed things. The way Lily chewed her thumbnail when she was reading something that confused her. The small running monologue she kept under her breath when she drew not words exactly, more of a rhythm, a continuous low narration she wasn't aware she was producing. The way she sat. Always with her back to something solid. Always with a clear line of sight to the nearest exit. Not paranoid. Just calibrated. Habitually oriented toward safety. I did that, Victoria thought one evening. I am the thing she learned to measure the distance from. It was not a comfortable thought. She sat with it anyway. One Thursday, she made a mistake. She had a call at 6 that she hadn't managed to shift a call with a stakeholder in a different time zone that had already been rescheduled twice, and she took it in her office, door closed, which she had promised herself she wouldn't do. She came back out at 6:45 and found Lily sitting in the hallway outside the office door, her notebook open, drawing. I'm sorry, Victoria said. That took longer than. It's fine, Lily said. She stood up. She walked to her room. The door didn't slam. It just closed. Quietly. Which was somehow worse than slamming would have been. Victoria stood in the hallway for a moment. Then she went to the kitchen and called Daniel Mercer on the number his supervisor had provided and stood at the counter while it rang. She waited for me, Victoria said when he answered. In the hallway. She didn't say anything about it. There was a pause on his end. She could hear, faintly, the sound of dishes. He was washing up. The ordinary sound of an ordinary evening in an ordinary kitchen. That's a good thing, he said. She didn't say anything. She just left. Quietly. She waited, he said again. A month ago, she wouldn't have waited. Victoria looked at the window. How long does this take? She said. I don't know, he said. Different for everyone. That's not a useful answer. No, he agreed. It's not. She almost smiled. The almost smile surprised her. She waited, she said. She waited, he said. She hung up and went and knocked on Lily's door. And this time, when there was no answer, she knocked once more and then opened it and sat down on the floor beside Lily's bed, which was where Lily was sitting with her notebook. She did not say anything. She did not ask about the drawing or suggest an activity, or try to reframe the evening, or explain the call, or reassure anyone of anything. She just sat on the floor. After a long time, long enough that her legs were starting to complain, Lily turned the notebook and showed her the drawing. The underground city, grown larger now, more detailed. Buildings with tiny lit windows. People in the middle space, suspended between sinking and floating. The middle part, Victoria said softly. Lily looked at her. Daniel told me, Victoria said, that you said the middle part is the longest. Lily looked back at the notebook. Yeah, he's right that it is. I'm sorry I haven't been in it more. Lily didn't say anything. But she didn't take the notebook back. The Tuesday after that conversation was not a good day. Victoria had been in back-to-back crises since 6 a.m. A client threatening to pull a $40 million contract over a implementation delay that was not Hartwell Dynamics' fault but was, as always, Hartwell Dynamics' problem. A legal escalation from the former CFO, who was apparently reviving old grievances through new attorneys, and a board member who had called 3 times before noon to express concerns about the merger she was pursuing, concerns which were legitimate, but which could have been expressed once, efficiently, in an email. She came home at 4:30, which was, by her recent standards, early. She came home with a headache that sat directly behind her left eye. She came home carrying the residue of a day in which she had handled 12 different problems and solved approximately 9 of them, which on an ordinary day would have felt like success. She came home to find Lily refusing to eat, refusing to speak to the caregiver, sitting on the kitchen floor with her arms around her knees and a look on her face that Victoria recognized as the precursor to everything falling apart. Lily, she said. What's going on? Lily didn't answer. I asked you a question. Victoria set her bag down, crouched, tried to soften her voice, heard herself, not quite managing it. Can you tell me what's happening right now? Nothing, Lily said. You're sitting on the floor. I like the floor, Lily. And here it came, the edge that 9 problems solved, and 3 problems outstanding, and a headache behind her left eye had left in her voice. The edge she knew was there, the edge she had been trying to file down for weeks and which, in this moment, she could not entirely contain. I have been trying. I have been here. I need you to meet me halfway. Lily looked up at her. The expression on her daughter's face was not defiance. It was something that struck Victoria with the specific force of recognition. It was the face of someone deciding not to try. I know you're trying, Lily said, but you're doing it like you do everything, like there's a deadline. The words were quiet. They were also precise enough to have drawn blood. That's not. Victoria stopped. She stood up. She turned toward the window, toward the city she had been navigating all day, and the city she had built, and the city that asked everything of her, and which she gave everything to, and which tonight felt like an argument she couldn't finish. I just need you to cooperate, she said. Just for tonight. I don't want to cooperate, Lily said. The plate on the counter not thrown, not aimed at anyone, just struck with the flat of Lily's palm as she pushed past to get to her room, fell and broke on the tile floor. Lily was in her room. The door, this time, slammed. Victoria stood in the kitchen with the pieces of the plate at her feet and something cracking open in her chest that she had been carefully preventing from cracking for several months. She called Daniel. She was not entirely certain why she had his number memorized. Only that she did. She said, I was doing it like there was a deadline, Victoria said. Her voice was not steady. She was aware of this. She found, for once, that she did not care. You probably were, he said. Gently. Not without kindness. I was trying. I know. I am trying, Victoria. It was the first time he had used her first name. Neither of them noted it. Trying and being aren't the same thing. Trying is about you. Being is about her. She can tell the difference. Victoria sat down on the kitchen floor, among the pieces of the plate. The tile was cold. She was in her work clothes, a good jacket, expensive shoes, sitting on a kitchen floor amid the wreckage of an 8-year-old's dinner plate. I don't know how to stop trying, she said. Yeah, he said. That's actually the whole problem. She made a sound that was close to a laugh, and also close to something else entirely. She waited for you, he said. Remember that. She waited in the hallway. That wasn't nothing. She broke a plate. She also waited in the hallway. She put her head back against the cabinet. The city outside was doing what it always did. Moving forward. indifferent, continuous. 8 million acts of ordinary human connection happening in all directions, in all the middle parts of all the days, in all the hallways and kitchens and floors where people sat and waited for each other. Stay on the floor, he said. What? When she comes out eventually, and she will stay on the floor. Don't stand up to meet her. Don't have a plan. Just be already there. Lily did come out. An hour and 12 minutes later, she appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas and looked at her mother sitting on the tile floor among the shards of the plate, which Victoria had not cleaned up, and said nothing for a long time. Then she walked across the kitchen carefully, around the broken pieces, and sat down on the floor beside Victoria. Not touching. Just adjacent. In the middle space, Victoria did not say anything. She did not move toward her daughter. She did not make a plan. She sat with the particular difficulty of sitting still and let the time pass in the way that time, blessedly, only passes when you have stopped trying to direct it. After a while, Lily put her head against Victoria's arm. It was brief, a few seconds, maybe. Then she straightened again. But it had happened. Voluntary, unrequested, unnegotiated contact from a child who had been flinching away from it for 8 months. Victoria kept her breath even. She did not move. She looked straight ahead. I like the floor, Lily said. It's actually not bad, Victoria said. Lily almost smiled. The almost smile looked, for a moment, like a very small door opening. In the weeks that followed, things changed. Not dramatically, not the way things change in stories where a single scene resolves everything, and the music swells and everyone understands what they couldn't before. The way things actually change, which is slowly, and imperfectly, and with setbacks that feel like disasters in the moment, and like data in retrospect. Victoria moved meetings. She moved them again when they migrated back. She had Preston put a physical reminder on her desk calendar. Floor 4, middle part. She stopped bringing the phone to dinner. She asked Rosie, who had by this point become a regular fixture in the penthouse's afternoon hours, what her dad liked for lunch. She sent a gift basket to Daniel's address, a nice one, practical, containing things she'd extrapolated he might actually use, and then felt slightly embarrassed about it and said nothing when he thanked her by leaving a note with the morning building report. She sat on the floor more often. She had a very expensive sofa, and she used it considerably less than the tile. Dr. Radford, the first psychologist, the one who had left her card, got a call from Preston in mid-November asking whether she did consultation work alongside primary caregivers rather than with children directly. She did. She began coming in on Friday afternoons, less to work with Lily than to work with Victoria. The calibration of presence, the practice of simply being, the discipline of not managing, which was, it turned out, the hardest discipline Victoria Hartwell had ever undertaken. Lily started, slowly, showing Victoria the underground city, adding to it in her presence, explaining the rules of its physics, the various districts and their peculiar weather patterns, the small characters who populated it and their individual problems. It was, Victoria came to understand, a complete world, the kind that only children build, with the full resources of an imagination that hasn't yet been told what it's supposed to imagine. She listened. She asked questions that had no correct answer. She learned that the best things to say, usually, were the shortest ones. Daniel Mercer was doing the windows on the 31st floor on a Monday, in December, when Victoria found him. She had come herself. Not sent Preston, not arranged it through the building coordinator. She had come down in the elevator in a coat over her work clothes, and found him at the windows with a squeegee and the particular focused attention he brought to everything. I have a proposal, she said. He looked at her. He kept the squeegee in his hand, which she appreciated. He wasn't going to make a performance of stopping work. Hartwell Dynamics has a corporate foundation, she said. It's mostly been used for standard philanthropic positioning. The usual beneficiaries, the usual amounts, the usual press releases. I'd like to redirect a significant portion of it, youth services. After-school programs, specifically, Portland and 2 other cities to start. She paused. I'd like you to run it. He was quiet for a moment. That's a significant offer, he said. I'm aware. Why me? You know how to do it, she said. You've done it before, and you care about it in the specific way that makes things actually work, as opposed to the way that makes things look good in annual reports. He looked out at the city through the partially cleaned window. Portland in December, low gray sky. The river a dark ribbon through the center of it. I like this job, he said. I know. I actually like it. It's not a placeholder. I understand. Rosie's school is 3 blocks from here. The schedule works. I know which drains are slow and which supply closet has the bad fluorescent light that gives people headaches, but nobody submitted the maintenance ticket for because they've stopped noticing it. He looked at her. Those things matter. They do, she said. The position doesn't require you to leave. It's structured as a directorship. You'd bring in program staff. Build infrastructure. The day-to-day wouldn't be yours to manage if you didn't want it to be. And the school is still 3 blocks away. He looked at the squeegee in his hand. There's a condition, he said. Namit, I design it. The structure, the priorities, the model, not the board. Not the communications team. Me. Within reason, she said. He raised an eyebrow slightly. Within substantial reason, she said. I'll stay out of the program design. I'll stay in the financials, because that's what I know. And because programs need someone in the financials who actually knows what they're doing. He looked at her for a moment. Something passed between them that was not quite a negotiation and not quite a trust fall, and was perhaps simply the acknowledgement that 2 people who are each very good at different things can sometimes, under the right conditions, make something that neither could make alone. Okay, he said. She nodded. She was already thinking through the board conversation, the foundation restructuring, the hire announcements, force of habit. She reined it in. Lily has started sleeping better, she said. Not as a payment, just as a fact she wanted to give him. Yeah, he said. Rosie too, actually. She was worried about her. Victoria looked at him. Your daughter was worried about my daughter. They're friends, he said simply. Victoria looked out at the window he'd half cleaned. On one side, smeared and gray, the world obscured. On the other side, clear. The city visible in its full December ordinariness. Its bridges and its rivers. And its 10,000 daily human movements. Thank you, she said. For the hallway. She found it herself, he said. I just didn't move her along. On the last Friday of December, which was cold enough that the river had a faint mist rising off it, Lily and Rosie were in the penthouse kitchen doing something ambitious with flour and food coloring that had, so far, produced a purple mess on the counter, and something that might eventually be cookies. Victoria sat at the kitchen island, not supervising, not directing, just there. The apartment smelled like sugar and slightly scorched flour, and the particular chaos of 2 children engaged in a creative project with full commitment and minimal concern for the consequences. There was food coloring on the counter. There was food coloring, improbably, on the ceiling light fixture. There was, notably, no broken ceramic anywhere. Rosie looked up from the bowl she was stirring and addressed Victoria with the comfortable directness she'd inherited from her father. Do you know how to make icing? She said. Not especially, Victoria said. We need icing. What happens if we don't have icing? Rosie considered this seriously. The cookies will still work. They just won't be as good. What makes the difference? Victoria asked. The icing is the part that makes them special, Rosie said. The cookie is fine by itself. But the icing is the thing that says someone paid attention to it. Victoria looked at her daughter, who was pressing cookie shapes into the dough with the back of a glass, brow furrowed, concentrating with the full weight of her attention on getting the circles even. She thought about the 43rd floor. The anthracite carpet, and the precision and the meetings that began at exactly their scheduled time, because time was a resource, and wasting it was a failure of discipline. She thought about Gregory Franklin and his wrong numbers, and the quiet that followed a correction. She thought about all the ways she had learned to make people perform, and all the ways she had failed to understand that performance and presence were not the same thing. She got down from the bar stool and went to stand beside her daughter. Show me the shapes, she said. Lily looked up. The look lasted only a moment. Then she handed Victoria the glass. They pressed circles into the dough together, side by side. Victoria's first three were asymmetrical. Lily fixed them without comment. Better, Lily said. About the fourth one. I'll take it, Victoria said. Outside, the city moved through its ordinary December. The river continued under its bridges. On the 31st floor, a man named Daniel Mercer was finishing his shift. Pausing to fix the supply closet light that nobody had submitted a ticket for, because he knew it was there, and it mattered, and the fact that nobody had noticed didn't make it not worth fixing. Some things worked like that. Small, consistent, unannounced. The maintenance of things that needed maintaining, whether or not anyone was watching. The presence in the hallway. The floor chosen over the sofa. The question that didn't rush the answer. The not moving them along.